The title says it all. Euro-nymphing is for cheaters. Now, we got to tread a little bit lightly as we go down this path, but at the end of the day, you get to be the judge and the jury. So I guess it's my turn to lay out my case. Spoiler alert, I love to Euro-nymph. Stay tuned. All right, let's start things off. This is not a Euro-nymphing instructional video. There are lots of those out there. Devin Olsen has made some excellent tutorials over the years. He's written some great books, so has George Daniel. There's a ton of resources for Euro-nymphing. Instead, I'm gonna kind of share with you my own experiences Euro-nymphing, and let's just go back to the beginning. So I heard about this thing. I believe at the time it was being referred to as check nymphing. And from what I understood, people were just like literally vacuuming up fish. It was just that effective for them. Now I kind of played around a little bit. I thought I understood just kind of at least the nuances of what I called at the time Euro-nymphing. Until one day I got an opportunity to fish with Josh Miller. He's a member of Fly Fishing Team USA. And we were fishing in central Pennsylvania at a relatively difficult spot. And let's put it this way. We were getting ready to go fishing. We roll up to this first spot. I knew the spot. It was not an easy spot by any means. By the time I was ready and walking to the water, Josh has already caught around, 3 to 5 fish, turned around and said, hey, they're not on here today. Let's go somewhere else. You notice that dramatic pause there? That was kind of what I did at the time, because when you catch 3 to 5 fish in a matter of minutes, to me, that tells you the fishing's on. But with European nymphing, that was just average. That was just acceptable for an individual like Josh. Now, by the way, Josh has been on my YouTube channel before. He's tied the beach body, one of my favorite stonefly patterns. I'll put a link to that down below. I'll also put a link to his YouTube channel. But that was my first taste of Euro-nymphing. Should this be illegal? So I immediately just had to know what I was missing. I mean, it was to the point where Josh and I were fishing nearly side by side. He was catching fish that I was not even touching, and I was able to fish in front of him. So I should have had first dibs at those fish, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I mean, when it came down to it, I was using a similar rod. We were using similar flies. I thought I had a similar line, but therein was kind of where our major differences were. He was using this really thin diameter line, a really, we'll say, extended leader/tippet system, whereas I was still at the traditional fly line, a traditional system. And that really caused such a major difference between the two styles we were trying to do. So after fishing with Josh, I did what I think probably all of you would have done. I immediately started my research, read everything, listened to podcasts, started finding every video I could on European nymphing, contact nymphing, Czech nymphing, Spanish nymphing, French nymphing, I don't care what you call it. If it was out there about nymphing, I wanted to know because it was extremely effective. So I stuck with my, we'll say, my nice dry fly rod I had at the time. It was a 9-foot 3-weight from St. Croix. It was their SC4, I believe. Don't call me out on that one. And it was a really beautiful rod. It had just a great dry fly action, pretty sensitive tip for the most part, and kind of a stiffer butt. So I thought that would be perfect. I invested in a Euro line. I invested in a Rio Euro leader. I'll put a link for that down below. It was kind of like my starter leader. And I started just trying out this method of fishing without really any auxiliary weight, just weighted flies, jig nymphs with just tungsten beads on, we'll just say jig hooks. That was kind of the gist of what I was doing. And gosh, it was really just, it was stellar right off the bat. In fact, it was right after I just got married. And my wife, Heather, said to me, after like maybe my 3rd or 4th trip out Euro-nymphing, she was just asking me how my day was, and I was talking to her about the fish and just the numbers, and I don't keep track exactly, but I keep track enough. And after, again, like that 4th trip, she looked at me and she said, what's going on? And I said to her, what do you mean? She's like, well, your numbers compared to the last couple years have like tripled. I mean, are you just going to new spots? Are you fishing harder? What's going on? And it was at that moment that I realized that Euro-nymphing was just this incredible tactic, because my numbers were proving it. I was fishing the same spots I had fished for the previous couple seasons, and I was having just some crazy success. Now, if I compare it to other Euro-nymphers out there, it really wasn't even considered success to some of the numbers that they had. But it was still, we'll say, I can't even say the numbers. I almost feel guilty saying some of these numbers. And for those of you out there, please pause the video right now if you've done this before. Go down the comment sections and also just talk about your own experiences, how you've just caught fish that you didn't even think belonged there before, because that's what it felt like. I kind of felt guilty in a sense. Now, via this YouTube channel, I think most of you know me as a YouTube fly tyer. That's kind of my thing. But I went from tying these kind of extravagant patterns. I loved wet flies, soft hackles, just intricate dry flies, to now fishing more competitive nymphs, Euro nymphs. I don't want to say junk flies, but I'm going to tiptoe up there. You've probably seen the progression of some of the flies that I've tied on my YouTube channel over the last few years, and it really just correlates to the flies that I was using. More nymphs that were just kind of tied in the round, which basically looked the same the whole way around. Paradagons, really slender body flies that would just sink in a hurry, get to the bottom, get into the drift, and catch a lot of fish. We call these confidence flies and guide flies, and they definitely work. There is no doubt about it. But it all comes back to this European nymphing. And that's just kind of the gist of this video, is that my numbers, the fish I was catching, it just drastically increased. It made me want to go to new spots to find just untouched water that people haven't fished and introduce these fish to European nymphing, because I felt confident. I mean, now going back to that first experience with Josh, there are some times where I'll go into a spot, and if I don't catch a fish in the first 10 minutes, there must not be any fish there, because why would they say no? How could they possibly resist European nymphing? They can't. All right, I know all of you were waiting for kind of a turn in the story, and it's really simple. European nymphing is not just about nymphing. It's about finding the appropriate technique for a riffle, for a pull, for a run, for whatever situation you're in. And it's not always just reverting automatically to a nymph. That is by no means kind of how my fishing exists to this day. Has my gear kind of morphed and transitioned over time? Absolutely. I no longer fish that 9-foot 3-weight. Instead, kind of my go-to stick is a 10-foot or a 10-foot 6-inch 3-weight. Those are my two primary rods that I kind of dictate what I'm going to use depending on the waterways in which I'm fishing. Do I still throw dry flies a lot? Absolutely. I'm recording this about a week after, we'll say, the opening to Pennsylvania trout season. And guess what? I showed up on the first day of trout in central Pennsylvania on that same stream that Josh really kind of showed me the nuance of European nymphing. I show up there fully expecting to be fishing nymphs all day long and having a great opening day with my family. But instead, no, these fish that you're probably seeing in the background right now and the smiles on our face, it's because we had some just incredible dry fly fishing. You're using our European nymphing system. Now, what does that tell all of us? I mean, it tells me there is definitely room to grow within this system. I can tell you, even in the last few years, just what I thought I knew about European nymphing, I was only scratching the surface. There are so many facets to it. I just recently took a day on the water with Pat Weiss. He's another individual. He's associated with Fly Fishing Team USA. He's considered by many to be one of the top anglers in our country. And he showed me just basically how to float a leader on the water while you're Euro nymphing. And gosh, it just opened up my mind. Pat, if you're watching this, I mean, I spent the next week and a half just practicing this cast. I can still just see that time on the water I spent with him just to get this one cast down, to kind of change my leader and have it float this way and turn this way in the air. And it was extremely demanding. And that was just one facet that I upgraded to. There are many, many more. So let's return to the title. European nymphing is for cheaters. What do you feel about that statement? Now, obviously, if you've been paying attention, you know I disagree with it. It is definitely not about cheating. It's not about doing anything outside of the legal bounds of fly fishing or fishing. It's just another style of fly fishing. And as you probably heard me say on this channel just numerous times, that is what I just love about fly fishing and fly tying. There are all these different lanes that we can drive in, and to each his or her own. That's the beauty of the sports that we all love. European nymphing, it's something I plan on doing for many, many years. Do I still love dry flies? Heck yeah. Do I love articulated streamers? You know it. I mean, let's be honest. I love to fly fish. I don't care if it's in the salt, freshwater, lakes for trout, out west, over in Iceland. I love it all. I want to do it all, especially European nymphing. Now, there is one other aspect of it that I want to kind of bring to our attention, and it's with the fact that we're catching more fish. Let's be honest about this. And if you know anyone who's really involved in this, I'd love you to pick their brains to see what they have to say about this. Because if they were catching, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 trout on an outing before, and now they're catching double, triple, quadruple that, think about how many more fish are just kind of being exposed. They're out of water. They're being touched by us. They're now just kind of open up to the environment. So just kind of ponder that for a moment. I had an individual who reached out to me via Instagram and asked if I European nymph every day, every time I'm out fishing. And I said, I tend to. Why? And this individual said that they don't, because they almost feel guilty doing it, because they are just kind of touching that many more fish over X amount of days per year. And that really caused me some reservation to kind of take a step back and wonder, hey, should we be this all in with this sport or not? So I'm going to kind of leave that question for all of you. So number one, what are your thoughts on European nymphing? Is this something you're into? Is it something you want to learn more about? And if you do, please, by all means, shoot me an email, tcammisa@gmail.com. You can find that down below. I'll give you recommendations on what I originally started with, what I started with in the middle of my journey, and what I'm using now, which is probably going to be different than in 6 months from this video. That's the beauty of fly fishing, at least for me. But then, are there consequences to this European nymphing? And if so, what are your thoughts about those? Sorry to pick your brain. I don't want to leave you with these heavy questions, but I know it's just fishing, but it's still a sport that we all love, and we have to take it serious. Well, with all of that said, thank you so much for watching this video about European nymphing. Plan on more of these to come in the future. But if you'd like to see more like this, please check out my website, which is troutandfeather.com. If you're into social media, you can find Trout and Feather on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and I am now even into TikTok. I never thought I would say this, but I'll be honest, it's a ton of fun. If you're not into it, you may want to just slightly investigate it. I mean, European nymph first, TikTok second. But again, if you have any questions or comments, please, by all means, leave them down below in the comments section of this video. You can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com, and I hope to see all of you soon. Thanks for watching.